Hello and welcome to another episode of Upgraded Gaming. I'm your host, Spencer Ryder, and we have a special guest today, Ike.
Howdy.
So we're going to be doing some special guest reviews in which they go through and have the same topics that we've covered in our reviews before, but they're going to share their opinions and their thoughts and their feelings on their experience with the games. So Ike, how about you go ahead and give us a little bit of an overview of yourself?
Will do. So my name's Ike. Happy to be here. I've been playing tabletop games since around 2010. Started with Dungeons & Dragons, and since have played a lot of other games. I've been to two major conventions, one being Gen Con in Indianapolis, the other being Origins in Columbus. As you can see, I play a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! Myself. I play a lot of other video games and various games, and I'm a huge fan of Upgraded Gaming, so thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the game, Unfair. So let's go ahead and take a look at the summary. Taking a look at Unfair, the year it was published was 2017 by publisher Cool Mini or Not. The player count is anywhere from 2 to 5 players. The playtime is roughly 50 to 125 minutes. It's age appropriate for 14 plus. The gameplay is considered competitive, and the genre would fall into the city building category. All right, so the first topic that we're going to cover is going to be story or theme. Now, when we're talking about story or theme, story is mostly towards the RPGs, so this one is going to be more of a competitive-based game. So we're looking more at the theme around the game. So, Ike, how'd you feel about the theme?
Yeah, I really like the theme in this game, and really what it comes down to is the fact you have built-in themes that work with the game. So you'll have a pirate theme and a gangster theme or robot theme, and these are actual things that are built into the game, and so the themes of your amusement parks matter. I also really enjoy the fact that all of the artwork and everything that's involved with it is consistent, which is very difficult to do when you have such drastically different themes, right?
Yeah.
So I really, really like it for those things. But one thing I will say is, at the beginning, when you're picking a theme, you're relying upon the shuffling of the cards. You're relying upon the RNG to get that theme that you want. Maybe I picked pirate at the very beginning, but because the cards are all shuffled together, I never actually get pirate cards. So for that reason, that's a little bit of a negative there.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I do agree that, the themes work really well together. And even if you were targeting for, say, robot or pirates and you don't end up getting it, it still isn't that big of a deal. And everything kind of mixes well together. So you don't feel like it's a huge letdown. But it is kind of disappointing if you're looking at building this big pirate amusement park and you don't get a single pirate card.
Right.
So I do agree. So overall, how would you rate this?
I would have to rate this a 7 out of 10. I really like the consistency and the variation within there, but it would be nice if I was able to play the theme that I originally picked at the beginning.
All right, so the next piece that we're going to cover is going to be scaling. So remember, we got two different aspects with scaling. One, we're going to be looking at the development and how the progression ramps and whether or not it's still challenging and interesting as it goes through. And then the other piece is we're going to look at player count. So for the development aspect, what'd you think?
I really, really like the scaling in this game from a development aspect. I think that this whole game is based off of having good scaling mechanics, and they nailed it. And that initial first start of that game, that first half of that game, very, very player friendly. Now the second half is when you get into the unfair cards, and that's the name of the game. So they bring a nice challenge that kind of keeps that interest, ramps up the difficulty a little bit. Maybe people get a little bit more competitive. So the way that they pace this game out and the way that they scale, it's really, really fantastic.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It's really interesting, some of the mechanics that tie into the beginning that help you to develop in the beginning, like the loan cards and some of the things that you can get a hold of that really starts you off. And you have those funfair cards that are the positive ones, which then in the second half of the game builds into the ones that can be very detrimental. Both of those help to keep it interesting and to keep it challenging all the way through, I would say.
So when it comes to scaling, the biggest detractor, I would say, if you started building something or trying to scale out a specific thing first half of the game and then you change your mind halfway through, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. After a certain point, you can't really change your mind.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, you're stuck with the cards that you've played. You only have so many turns in so many different rounds. And whereas it seems like a lot, but by the time you get to the second half of the game, you can't really change a large portion of that foundation.
Yeah, no, exactly. Especially when it comes to those showcase cards. I mean, so much of your scaling can build off of that, and you get those first at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, new players probably won't be able to know how to scale initially, right? I mean, you're going to be kind of guessing it's going to be experimental, so it's difficult for newer players to have that direction originally. After that first game that we played, when I creamed you, then after that, things got a lot easier that second game.
Yeah, and I would say it is definitely hard, especially in that one game. Like, as soon as you start to fall behind, if you're falling behind, it's just going to get that much worse if you end up messing up a blueprint or messing up a build or skipping out on a crucial card. Then you could just ruin your entire scaling mechanism and late game. So, yeah.
So it's not perfect, but all things considered, I still think they really did a solid job.
So what about the player count? What would you say about it?
Yes, so we played 2 different games. One of them was with 3 players, the other one with 4 players. And adding in that 4th player, it almost doubled our time, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, so that is something to consider. It didn't bug me as much because the game is still so engaging. There's a lot to think on, there's a lot to strategize on, there's a lot of ways you can plan how to scale. What do you think?
That's good. Yeah, no, I would definitely agree that adding in different player count is definitely going to increase your play time, just with any other game. But I would definitely say that make sure that there's a good foundation of understanding of what's going on with the game. So start with their setup that they recommend for new players, do a shortened version of the game, and get an understanding of the baseline of the rules. It then makes the play time go a little bit quicker because you have a good foundation of the understanding of the game. So what would you say was your rating overall?
Yeah, for scaling, I'm gonna have to say 8 out of 10. Again, I really think that the game focused on what's most important when it comes to building out a theme park, and they really made those scaling mechanics just crisp, very, very crisp.
All right, so the next piece we're going to talk about is going to be mechanics. Now, everyone knows this is my favorite part. Mechanics are the heart and soul of the games. This is really what determines what it's all about. Tell me, what do you think about the mechanics, Ike?
I like the mechanics of this game. I think that the easiest way I could describe it would be simple yet sophisticated. They're not overly complicated to where you have to do at least 20 minutes of prep to understand how the flow of things work, but they're not so simple that it leaves you wanting more and there's nothing really to sink your teeth into. I think this game has really, really good balance in that way. You can create an offensive build, you can also create a defensive build. You have a lot of flexibility in how you want to use those mechanics in the game. When it comes to docking points a little bit, there's no real bonus points when it comes to consistency. The win condition for icons is incredibly strong. I mean, you beat us last game because you had icons all on one ride, right?
Yeah.
But you only had 2 rides. So how good of that is as an amusement park, right? So basically, I think that what it does really, really well is not overcomplicate things. It doesn't overwhelm the player, but still gives you a lot of different things that you can do within the game.
Yeah, I mean, you get to choose what cards that you want to play, so you can determine, what mechanics you want your theme park to kind of have in it, whether it's generating money, whether it's going to be offensive capabilities and messing with everybody else's parks, or if it's just going to be defensive and making sure that nobody touches anything on your side. Then you can add that in and do that based on whatever cards you actually get in your hands.
Now, on that point, I think that one of the things that needs to be maybe tweaked a little bit when it comes to this game is card frequency. So we had, when we were playing our second playthrough, there were 2 cards in the deck that one of the players needed to fulfill a blueprint, which is part of the ways that you get points and win at the end of the game. Now, with only 2 cards, and keep in mind, we're adding in about 4 different decks when we were playing that round, only 2 cards there, that could completely destroy the difference between you winning and you losing. That, in my opinion, I think that is a weak point. You shouldn't have just one card totally topple the strategy that you've been building towards. So I think that is one thing that that needs to be tweaked a little bit.
A lot of the blueprints, they do a really good job at being generic. They say add a feature or add this or add that, and it's not a very specific card. But in those cases where there's very specific cards and there's 2 of them out of, I mean, the deck gets pretty big with multiple themes, and only having 2 of those, and the risk doesn't outweigh the reward, then it's, yeah, that piece probably is a downfall for me as well.
It just needs tweaked a little, yeah. And I think, but to the point of the blueprints, the fact they state the difficulty on the card so that new players, such as myself, I was able to look at that card and say, oh, okay, I have an automatic gauge as to whether or not I'm going to be able to complete this blueprint. The flexibility in the mechanics really was the saving grace.
So how would you rate it overall?
Overall, and this is a tough one for me, I would have to rate this as a 7 out of 10. Now, they get a lot of points because of the flexibility, but the fact that icons are such an overpowered mechanic for a win condition, and the fact that card frequency, it came up a couple of times, I think that those things take a little bit away from the gameplay and make me hyper-focus on that. So, overall, 7 out of 10.
All right, next piece we're going to cover is going to be complexity. So we're going to look at this on a high, medium, or low scale, and we're looking at how advanced are the mechanics and the details within the game. Does it require a lot of studying and a lot of in-depth review and multiple references to the manual, or is it as simple as go fish? So what did you think about the complexity?
Yeah, I really liked how complex this game was. I think it's a perfect middle ground between something that can be super in-depth and you have a lot of different strategy involved with it, or you can just play it simply and just build out your theme park and have a good time. You know, the mechanics, like I said earlier, I think simple but sophisticated is a really great way to say it. You know, the only negative I would have to really give is that sometimes I didn't really know what all my available options are, but that doesn't last long, right? After 2 playthroughs, I already feel like I have a solid grasp on the game. I'm already thinking about how I could play differently next time. So I would have to say it's a perfect middle ground between something that's hard and you can sink your teeth into and you know, kind of go back and forth on the rules and stuff, but it's, you know, it's not just go fish where you don't have a lot of depth.
We only had to reference the manual a few times. We've done a few playthroughs of this game. I've played a handful of times myself. And yeah, there was some checking here or there, but I mean, the foundations of the game, majority of the base stuff is fairly simplistic. But yet, like you said, I think that's a great way of putting it, is it's sophisticated to where there are different mechanics that are within the game that, I mean, basically, if you choose to go in that direction, you can. But then if you decide to keep it a little more simplistic and just gather some money or do some things that aren't that complicating, you can do that as well. All right, now we're going to talk about unique. So what makes this game special? Why is it going to hit the table more often than, you know, the other games that are sitting on your shelves? And, you know, what is it that really has the wow factor? So what'd you think about the unique factor for this?
Yeah, I have never played a game like this before. And what I really like about it is that it's not reinventing the wheel with any of its individual mechanics or pieces, right? It's pulling a lot of different aspects from different games, but the whole is greater than the sum of all of its parts in this case. The way that they put those together really makes it something special and really brings in that replayability.
Yeah.
You know, the fact it's so customizable in how you want to play, you know, the competitiveness, the collaboration that comes up. I know we were making, you know, accords with each other to not screw each other over if we wanted to. That's unique. It's very rare that I find a game where you can create those agreements with players and be collaborative in a way that doesn't just make the game unfun. You know, especially in a competitive game, it's difficult to do that well. So I think that this game has a lot that's special to it. I have not played a game like this in the way that they've set up all these pieces together.
And I think it's an interesting thing to point out is the fact that a lot of games are either collaborative or competitive. And so this one, whereas, yeah, sure, whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the victor, but at the same time, like you said, we come up with these accords, or, you know, you can have agreements with other players. You can decide just not to mess with anybody and just to play a complete defensive game. And so there's not a lot of games that you'll find that have both aspects to where you can be offensive or you can be defensive. You can decide if you want to be collaborative. You get to kind of choose. But at the end of the day, it does come down to the points, but it really doesn't change the fun factor however you decide to play it.
Totally agree. Yeah.
So how would you score this overall for Unique?
For Unique, I got to give this one a 9 out of 10. I think it really nails all of it, the way that they put up the whole package together from start to finish. It's a new experience for me.
Yeah.
So 9 out of 10.
All right, now we're going to look into the quality. Now, once again, the quality is kind of like that little extra bit on the end for these games. It adds the bonus points. So quality, how would you go ahead and look at quality?
Yeah, so when it comes to the positives of quality, I think the art direction behind this game is really, really good. With all of these different themes, you still see the artwork and it still seems consistent. There's nothing that looks super out of place or, distracts me from the overall game. I think that they add a little bit of flavor text and details in some of the drawings and in some of the different cards it's amusing, it's fun. It adds a little bit of that extra feeling of like, okay, I'm in an amusement park, but also the unfair aspect of it. It's a little cheeky. Love that part. But there are a couple things here that really just decrease the quality of life in the game. Okay. And the two major things I'm going to point out is that when it comes to tracking your stars, it's something you do every single round, and there is no piece of the game that would help me with tracking those stars. I mean, something to track stars would really just make it a smoother experience, in my opinion. Yeah. The second thing that I really wish that we had was player mats. Not having that in the base game, especially when some of the mechanics, the order in which your attractions are played is a huge part of some of these mechanics, right?
It's true, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, the main thing that really comes into play here is the fact that you have to start from left to right with your build. And then if you're a first-time player, you don't have that visual in your mind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the beginning, you may not think that it's a big deal, but in the end, it can actually break some of the mechanics in the game. Right. So not having that visual, I understand the frustration.
Yeah. Not having that in the base game. As a first player, I got to see how those cards work, because otherwise I'm not going to know where to put stuff, and it's just a lesson it's better learned earlier. So another small thing, and this is a pet peeve of mine, but this is what tracks what round we're on. It's the only orange thing that's in the game. For me, personally, I'm an aesthetics person. I like different color palettes. This sits out like a sore thumb. If you're watching, turn this into a metal piece, please.
So, points-wise, where are you going with quality?
All things considered, hearing that they're going to be doing stuff and adding to it, I still have to judge this based upon just the base game here. I think there's a lot of room to improve in tracking stars, and having a game mat would save me a lot of time and trouble later on. So I'm going to have to give this one a 6 out of 10.
All right, fair enough. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the score review. So overall, the story or theme was a 7, scaling an 8, mechanics a 7, unique a 9, quality a 6. So overall, that's a 7.4 with a medium complexity. All right, so this is everything that we had for the review today. And so for this overall, what do you think, Ike? Is this something that you would recommend? And if so, who would you recommend it to?
Yes, I would recommend this game. When it comes to who you're going to recommend it to, I would just keep these things in mind. If someone has only played Monopoly or simplistic card games, this might be initially a little bit of a struggle for them to grasp. But if anyone has played any advanced board game or any card game, such as Yu-Gi-Oh!, they're going to be able to pick this up really easily. So I think that this has a really, really wide reach as to people that would enjoy it, but keep in mind that there might be that little bit of a skill curve for people that may not be experienced with more advanced board games. But I absolutely would recommend it, and it's definitely something I'm hoping to pick up soon.
I'd like to thank you, Ike, for joining me today for this special guest review.
It was my pleasure.
And as a token of our appreciation here at Upgraded Gaming, we'd like to give you an Upgraded Gaming t-shirt.
Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you all for tuning in. Please leave your feedback below, like and subscribe if you enjoyed, And until next time.